we'll be able to share it later on. So first of all, welcome. I'm Bobby Hackett. I'm at the Bonner Foundation. I'm probably the least expert at this topic, but those of you who are new to this met Scott a number of years ago, and I sort of head up a foundation that funds a service-based college scholarship where students do 8 to 10 hours of service a week, plus training and enrichment for all 4 years of college, and often in the summers. And in their developmental trajectory, getting into social action and understanding root causes and different ways of bringing about change are pretty important. So it's called the Bonner Program. You can read about us at bonner.org. And we also work with the whole school to make the school more engaged. And it struck me that Scott's way of teaching this fit our way of thinking about it, which is you better do it, not just talk about it, or read about it. And that's not, doesn't seem to me, in my experience, as common an approach. So we've been introducing them to schools in our network, but when we do this kind of thing, we bring it to anybody who's interested. And it's, well, we're a pretty established nonprofit. This is a sort of a wing it type operation to sort of see what kind of interest we can get and how we can support folks. So that's me. Scott, why don't you introduce yourself? And then what I'll do is I'm going to facilitate. So I'll call on people as we go through. So Scott, why don't you just introduce yourself?
So I'm Scott Myers-Lipton. I'm at San Jose State University. And I would just say that I've been teaching social action now, I think 13 years, every semester, 26 times I've done it. So I feel like I'm getting better at it. I'm still learning and always learning from on these calls, like how to do it better. And actually from our last call, took something and used it, and it was gold. So thank you for being on the call and adding your ideas.
All right, so Betsy, why don't we do you next because you're on the call.
Okay, great. You all, the rest of you can all see each other.
Just about, yeah.
Sorry not to see your smiling faces. So I'm Betsy Leander Wright. I teach sociology at LaSalle College in Newton, Massachusetts. And every spring, I teach a course called Action for Social Justice, where the students pick a topic, set a goal as a whole group, design a campaign, and carry it out during the semester, the one semester. I've done it once at Boston College and 4 times at LaSalle, and I'll be teaching it again in the spring. So I like being on these calls to learn from what you all do.
Awesome. Wonderful. Janet, your microphone's not working. Oh, no, now it is. Yeah, we're good.
Okay, you got it? Okay.
Yes.
Janet Gray, I'm at the College of New Jersey. I'm one of a team of 4 who are trying to figure out ways to interlink our courses, and that's across 4 different departments.
Wow.
So, yeah.
You're in what department?
Pardon me, I'm in Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies. The other members of the foursome are from psychology, sociology, and education.
Perfect. Emilia.
Hello, everyone. I'm Emilia Yela. I'm a postdoctoral researcher here at the Harvard Kennedy School. I come from Barcelona. In Barcelona, I'm working together with Tinka, that I see that you're here. Hello, Tinka. We are coming from a research group in Spain in which we do research with the people. So we use a methodology that is called the communicative methodology of research, with the idea of always involving the communities in the process of knowledge construction. So I met up Scott in the last American Sociological Association conference, and well, he was the one that explained that this seminar or webinar is going on. And here in Harvard Kennedy School, I'm working with Marshall Gans. So we are researching on the social impact of the public narratives approach. That is a approach that Marshall has been working with in the last, 40 decades. And the idea then is to implement this approach back in Spain with the Roma community. My main research area has been with the Roma community in Spain.
Perfect. With that, Tinka, why don't you go next?
Hi, yeah, I'm Tinka Schubert, and as Emilia said, we come from the same institution in Spain. Currently, I'm a visiting scholar at Stanford University, and I am working with Professor Norman Naimark on the mass rapes at the end of the Second World War. And basically coming from a background where we, as Emilia said, involve the community in our research process, my goal would be to take this event, which is the largest attack against women, with violence against women, in the history. I want to take that and create a movement or engage people in starting a movement and social action to create collective memory so that we can remember and talk about it and open up spaces to talk about violence against women.
Great. Thank you. Because on my screen, Luke, you're the next on I'm in this second row of my screen. So why don't you go?
Great, thanks. My name is Luke Terra, Associate Director at the Haas Center for Public Service at Stanford. So Tinka, nice to see you from across the farm somewhere. My role here at the Haas Center is to support faculty in developing community engaged learning courses, and social action fits really squarely in that wheelhouse, but we don't have anything exactly like that. We do have some related courses that prepare students to do a summer fellowship working on different kinds of campaigns, but I would love to see something that was a little bit more group oriented and where the action happened during the quarter rather than kind of putting it off for later. So I'm really interested in thinking about how this model might apply for some of the work that we do here.
Yeah, fantastic. Going to the next row, Sophia Prey. Oh, I got to unmute.
Hello. Okay, sorry. Yes, now I'm off mute. I'm coming from Colorado College. I'm the civic leadership paraprofessional in the community engagement office here, and we are in our first year of doing a community organizing class on our campus for students who are doing Public Achievement, which is a national program that gets college students to teach younger kids in elementary and middle schools how to do community organizing in their own communities. And I am also in a mostly student advising role for a co-op, which is a program that we just kind of launched last year as well, to encourage Colorado College students to work together and do collective impact work to create more impactful change in the community. So really looking for more strategies to improve our class for this year and the years to come.
Fantastic, thank you. Soma?
Hi, I'm Soma. I work in the same department as Scott. And I think I do my classes a little bit differently than he does, but I have done a bunch of different projects and we tend to do it as a class. So this semester they're trying to get a Native Student Center and they're working on that. But we also do class projects that are around social action. So we all, as a class, do certain things, like we're doing the Clothesline project and talking about different aspects of violence, like LGBT violence and in LGBT relationships and in heterosexual relationships. And then we tend to we'd go out all together and do that. So I think that it's been really successful at engaging students in social action and gives them a different kind of learning experience that we get to do together versus alone. So they kind of vote on which they want to do, and that's what they vote to do usually.
Yeah, great. And one thing to point out is that while Scott's helping lead this, the goal isn't that everybody does the course just exactly the way Scott does it, right? But I think there is this underlying commitment to models where students actually go do the work, don't just learn about the work.
Absolutely.
Yeah, hey everybody. I'm Jonathan Welly. I'm up here in Cleveland, Ohio, my hometown. I studied with Marshall Ganz at the Kennedy School, graduated in 2015, and now I'm back in Cleveland organizing the community directly through Cleveland Owns, which is a group that builds cooperative businesses as a way to promote and achieve economic justice in our city. And at the same time, have a unique opportunity to potentially teach a class on community organizing at Cleveland State University, which is one of the large urban schools here in our city. Planning to channel my best Marshall Gans and bring some of what I really enjoyed and took away from his class to Cleveland, which is in desperate need of that. We have a city full of folks who study things like urban planning and too many organizers in our city. So hoping to change that for a class at Cleveland State.
Great.
So Jonathan, I think that I met you in 2014.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible. At the Kennedy School?
Yes, at the Kennedy School. We met up in the public narrative class.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Yes, I took public narratives in
Yes,
fall of
yes, I
2022.
remember.
That's so great. Oh my gosh. Good to
I'm
see
sure you didn't have a beard back then, you know.
That's right. I had no beard.
Yeah.
Fewer wrinkles.
Yeah. Well, we have 5 years more.
That's right. Well, great to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you.
All right, finally, Jesse Scott. You want to unmute yourself, Jesse? There you go.
Oh, here I am, yes. Hello, I'm Jesse Scott. I work at DePauw University. I am the director of the center there, which includes the Bonner Scholar Program. And I missed the opening prompt, Bobby. Am I answering why I'm here?
Just introducing yourself, yeah.
Okay. That's probably enough for right now.
Okay, all right, very good. Yeah, but just so you guys know, that center does the Bonner program, which is sort of a service-based scholarship, but they're also the home, the catalyst for all the campus-wide engagement tied to civic purposes. And Jesse's done a lot of research on community-based research as a model. And the trick is, in schools like hers, which are small, how do you find a brave faculty member to take this on? So the first thing you do is try to understand how it works, I assume. And I've known Jessie for as long as she's had her job, which is more than 2 or 3 years, I think now.
It's been a while. And actually, I just had a great conversation. We're starting our own Office of Research at DePauw, and I just met with the faculty who's in charge of it, and he's super interested in doing some more community-based research and building structures for that.
Yeah, wonderful. Awesome. Okay. We just had a couple more people join. So let's just, before we sign off here, Matthew.
Yes.
I know you just got on. Can you introduce yourself to this new crowd? Many new faces here.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. My name is Matthew Gendian. I'm a professor of sociology, and I direct the Humanics program at Fresno State. I've been teaching a course on social policy, advocacy, and community organizing within the Humanics program, which is a certificate program that also offers a minor in philanthropic and community-based leadership.
Fantastic. And Matthew's been part of a number of these calls, so he's a veteran. All right, so I'm gonna put the agenda back on the screen. I'm gonna go back and forth with that because it's kind of more fun to see lots of people's faces at once. So we've done the introductions. So we're gonna do some announcements. So Scott, why don't you just go start with yours?
Yeah, I just want to, I had mentioned that the students were, the Student Homeless Alliance is one of, it started out 7 campaigns in my class this semester. So that's a lot of campaigns to kind of, for me to juggle. When I break them into groups, I couldn't even get around to half of those in the 30 minutes or so that we had for class time. So, but now this kind of interesting, I'm not sure if I'd be interested to hear of others when they teach the class, that original 7 has gotten down to like 4, which is definitely more manageable. So now this group is the primary group. It's got probably 14 students in it out of a class of 32. And just so you know, this group had been on the down low for the last 6 months, trying to work with administration and kind of just getting a walled response to their demands and to their clarification about how many beds were available, how do people get the beds and get the grants, and were they giving beds and grants first rather than loans, never getting clear answers from administration. And then in the middle of that, on September 26th or 7th, a news organization reported that they had only housed 6 people out of over 200 that came there, 84 asking for beds. And so with that information, I just said to them, sometimes you're given like a royal flush, and particularly if a number comes along with it, like 6 beds out of 84. So you can do what you want with that, but it's in the social action world, it's a very powerful thing to have like where you're trying to move an administration or the target forward, and that they're shown to be incompetent. and not doing their job. So the students took that information, was 6, they plastered within days of the campus that number, and then called for a press conference. And they had already been told, we knew that was not going to make the university happy. That's why I let the students decide what they were going to do. And I reminded them in their last meeting of March with the president, the vice president told the students directly after the president left, don't march anymore and don't be doing any more press conferences. But they dealt with that, trying to work with the administration in good spirit, always good spirit. They were stonewalling. So they decided to turn on the heat again. It was was the lead story on CBS News locally. It was covered in all the major press, and I sent you a couple of the articles, but if you go online, you can see it. And that really is, even though it's incredibly uncomfortable to hold that, particularly for the faculty. I've had 2 meetings with the provost. I've met with the dean over the last week. But we're in a situation, and the mayor has called me and the students, the supervisor so it's definitely electrified the community around the issue. But we got to a place where there's going to be a solution, and the students are going to get a major win. Don't quote me on that. It's not done till it's done, but they're in dialogue with the president. But I reminded the students just about, creative tension, that Dr. King's words were, I'm not afraid of tension. Our goal is to expose and to bring to light what is already a problem. And you're not the problem bringing it, I told the students, you're exposing the problem that exists. So with that, but there's a lot of pressure. There's been a lot of pressure from administration down about this, but it's going to resolve itself, and then the students will be heroes in the next coming weeks, I think. But it's interesting, and it's interesting to be a faculty member in the midst of that, because they're calling me into their office. So I'll leave it there, and then answer any questions you want to have about, because I think, and that's kind of like, I tell the students, when you start a campaign, there's DEFCON 1, which is, you go in and you ask nicely for, and you might say demand, or you say request, but these are the things we want, and you might not know that it's a problem, and that's all very nice. You start with a smile, and then if they say no, then you kind of turn up the heat. You do a petition drive or a phone call, into them, and you might do a rally, all small stuff. But, probably by them telling them not to do a press conference, they pushed it to, I said out of 10, DEFCON 5, on the list of what they could do. So, yeah, I'll stop there.
Yeah,
should we acknowledge the beauty of tenure in that circumstance?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's really neat to hear the students taking control of that. I know you're the one being called in there, and I applaud you on that. And I also want to recognize it takes your perspective of being at a university setting for so many years to say that it's a process, it will work itself out, because many newer people coming to the work, they're like, oh my God, you're being called into the dean's office? What did the provost say? And is that going to jeopardize, other kinds of things like sabbatical proposals or other things? So I want to acknowledge those 2 things, the tenure and then your perspective of many years in a university sitting, that if you stick to it, if you have allies, if you have a good reputation for doing good work, that you can weather that minor storm.
Yeah. And I would say that I have a great relationship with the dean. And so I was texting him all along what was going to happen. So I think it's really important. I'm not playing gotcha. There's no gotcha. That I would say the students are going to, I just met with the students. This is what they decided, not me. It's their thing. And I said, this is what they're going to do. And the dean was like, yeah, of course they're going to do that. Of course. And, but that puts him in a jeopardy, because he's actually, out of all the group, he serves at the pleasure of the president. Mm-hmm. So he then has to go to the president and communicate that. And the provost is like the number 2 in charge. And I met with him twice. He's totally fine now. Once they hear the whole story and they see the students, and that I'm not behind there controlling them, they're totally my experience. But it's not pretty sometimes.
I'll just add that this particular concern from folks thinking about doing this and folks who start doing it is so prominent that we can't talk about it enough. And Matthew's point around the importance of tenure in that situation, not just tenure, but a full professor who has had long relationships with senior administrators who can give the background behind the scenes is pretty critical. When we bring this to new, younger faculty, there's understandably some concern. Yeah. So I'm going to do one more introduction because Marshall just joined us. Marshall, could just introduce yourself and let other folks know who you are.
Hi, Marshall.
Yeah. Hi.
You're good. Yeah.
Yeah. Marshall Gans. I teach organizing at the Kennedy School for a number of years, and before that, did organizing. And I see Josh here, who was in a class. I see Amelia. So it's good to see you, Josh. I haven't seen you in a while. Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm doing. And I just think this initiative to try to introduce organizing at the in the undergraduate context is really important to do. Yeah. So I want to help in any way that I can.
Yeah, well, we're really glad you're here. I'll just tell everybody right now, in case you have to leave early, November 15th, same time. And you'll get this multiple times before then. Marshall's going to lead the discussion and talk about the importance of that, and that'll be the major part of that agenda. So be ready for that. Okay, I'm going to go back to the agenda here for a second.
If I may, I just want to, just because Marshall just joined us, I want to mention that I was at the Gandhi Global Legacy Conference at Fresno State today. Just spoke with Dolores Huerta and Reverend James Lawson, and they mentioned Fred Ross, right, and the work that you guys did with the UFW, right, and the organizing for farm workers in California. So again, thank you for all of that.
Fresno is a good place for it to be happening, huh?
It's great. It's a great place to celebrate Gandhi's 150th birthday.
Yeah, that's terrific.
It's nice. It's nice. I like seeing generational change and influence. So we have that right on this call right here, which is
that's right.
Wonderful. Let me just. So I'm while I'm not the person who knows a lot about this stuff in terms of doing it. I have the role in part of helping facilitate this process of the group coming together. We've set up at the foundation. We're just now about to launch this learning community. And this will be, we're going to experiment with this as a platform for people to come together to get to know each other and have these conversations. There's going to be, you'll get invited. And when you come in, you do a little profile on yourself. And then I'll have you go to this group on the left. We have these different Bonner groups. But then down at the bottom, we have Teaching Social Action Group. And in there, we'll have who the members are. So this is, you just join this, and then updates and other things will come through your email from this. I think there's pretty good controls about notifications. So if it's one of those things where you're being notified too much, you can turn it off and come visit it when you feel like it. It's new, so I don't really know exactly what's going on there. It'll have this news feed in the middle, as you can see, just as one announcement, but as we get going, we'll have more things. The discovery button will be if there's some new article or topic or something that was posted, that'll show up here. You can see who the other members are. A couple of you have joined my staff, but a few other folks, because we did send some stuff out. These are some Bonner students. And then one of the key areas will be topics. These are like focused discussion rooms. So we're drafting a guide on this, a teacher's guide, a faculty guide to teaching social action, and we'll invite you guys to participate in that development. But before the class begins is one section, and then we have teaching the class, and there seems to be a lot of discussion about any one of these topics, setting the tone. So we just divided it up on those chapters. Then after the class ends, there may be other topics. This may not be the right way to organize it. We'll have to learn that together as we go along. And then we can announce events here. So we're setting this up, and you'll get the email. Try it out. Be patient with us as we try to make it work. It's a place for dialogue. We also can host workshops here. So we'll announce the events. They'll show up in your email box there. But we'll also we'll host the webinar. We can put that kind of thing in here. So it's something we're going to try to get beyond just the discussion list. and these once a month webinars. This might give us some other opportunities for that kind of sharing.
That's great.
Awesome.
So be on the lookout for that. When you get the invite, if you have any questions or concerns or whatever, just email me and we'll work that through. Okay, I'm going to go back to the agenda. If I do this properly. Any other announcements people want to make? Okay. Scott, I'll read the question, Scott, but I think you may have fielded this question from Miriam.
Yeah, I apologize. She couldn't be on the call. She's doing community organizing session today with her students. So but maybe Janet might know about it too.
Pass things on to her.
Okay, so one issue that she's noted is that students in the class feeling overwhelmed by the amount of new skills and tasks. While most of my students are feeling positive so far, there are a few whose current feelings were encapsulated by one student's comment on chapter 3 of Change, of the book. The policy service learning experience has been stressful and hard to manage. There have not been many rewarding moments thus far. And after a month of classes, we should have accomplished something by now. This is the most different class I've taken as a college student. So maybe I'm shell-shocked, but there's always so much to do with so little time. And even the extra amount of time put in, there's no visible, quantifiable change or accomplishments. I found my other classes to be more personally rewarding. So this is, at this point, this is just for open group discussion around how people have confronted this kind of challenge before and how they think about it. So I'm going to turn that off and let people just muse on this. Who wants to start? Marshall, how about you?
You're going to have to cold call somebody. No.
You must have had this happen.
Yeah. I mean, and it happens more in required classes than with their electives. And I kind of think electives are really, I don't know, just my personal experience is it's so much more useful. I mean, in the big term, having it be required is great. But in terms of the actual learning of the students, when there are people who don't want to be there and whose sort of commitment is to justifying that, it makes it a lot harder for the others to learn. And so I think there really are some choices, and I've always opted for the elective side. Of course, that's in the context. The other is, I would think what this student wrote, I would take as a sign that this class is really good, and that the challenge is coaching this student through. And I think, my reaction to that would be one-on-one coaching with the student. And because they're sort of approaching it more with a fixed mindset than a growth mindset, to quote Carol Dweck. And that's where there could be real growth for this student, to open them up to uncertainty and possibility and learning. That's why I've always thought of what we're doing as creating brave spaces rather than safe spaces. So as to help people find sources of courage to learn rather than protecting them from the discomfort of learning. So, who knows what the individual case is here, but for me, it would be a one-on-one coaching deal.
Yeah, interesting. Who else wants to pipe in? Matthew, I think about some of these. Oh, go ahead.
I love this question. I think that's a great point because I have found the same thing in some of my classes when I introduce a project or they vote on it, they come up with these ideas, but then when we go to implement it, it becomes more work than they thought it would be or different. And I think I like that the student said this, and I think that there's an opportunity, like the last person was saying, there's an opportunity to talk about what is something that's really hard better? Like, I mean, how do we frame our classes? If it's easy and you just get to go and talk and feel good, is that a class that is the best class, or a class that makes you feel uncomfortable and pushes you? And in the end, you get a class that where you've changed yourself, right? You've the last person said, like the growth mindset. And I think that that's something that's important, like this with the bathroom project that I had, where everyone was like, oh my God, why do we do this? This is so hard. And I'm like, yeah, now you really get a taste of what it's like to be a person that's trans and what that's like. You had no idea before, and now you have a little taste of the hardness of how difficult that might be. And for them, it was a really good experience. So I think that it's an opportunity for them.
Me too.
Yeah, nice.
So,
This is Betsy. I've got I have students who feel that way too, and for the spring I'm changing a few things so that there's more accomplishments earlier in the semester. I think the first times I taught this course, I sort of thought of it as like, first they learn skills and we plan the campaign and then they do it. For some students who just are motivated or who have more of an activist temperament, that worked fine. But some students were confused in the first part and stressed in the second part, especially, as Marshall said, people are required to take it. So I think I'm going to have them have some small milestones in the areas that are more familiar to them, like spreading things on social media and smaller on-campus things before they tackle the off-campus challenges.
To what extent do they experience the training itself as empowering? In other words, to what extent is like, oh, now I know to have relationships? In other words, that there's enough intrinsic reward in the training itself that it isn't contingent on the big outcome at the end, but that the outcomes are sustained through the pedagogical experience.
Yeah,
that's good too.
I think a lot of this too is about shaping expectations at the outset. I love Marshall's comment about we're creating brave spaces. I use the Cornel West quote that says that he said, "You're not ready to be educated if you're not ready to be uncomfortable," because learning is about discomforting the mind and tackling questions that we haven't considered before, or questions we have considered in a different way. And so part of it too is I think our students are used to syllabi that have a point A and a point B, and you just follow the week by week thing, and boom, you're done. And I actually draw it on the board. This class is not a point A to point B. You're going to take a route that's going all over the place. And so get ready for a ride. And if you're not ready for it, that's okay too. So you have it is an elective on my campus. And so you can choose a different elective. And I had probably, 6 out of 30 drop after the first week or two of class. And I picked up a couple new folks who are on the roller coaster now. And so we're going for the ride. And I agree with Marshall about the relational aspect. Right, that doesn't have to be producing something. It can be getting to know each other and yourself better. And so and the more I'm hearing about the Gandhi conference here today and yesterday, I'm hearing more about the relational component of the work we're doing, and that's the sustainable part that Marshall's talking about.
One of the chapters in Scott's book isn't about the technique of doing organizing. It's about the group dynamics. And there's not enough courses where students are doing group work together. That's complicated. I don't mean going to a lab where you just do one thing, but something like this that's in the real world and unpredictable. And you have different personality types, and you have different expectations for what's going to happen. And the idea that change should be accomplished in the context of a semester, or some things that have been around for an awfully long time. Setting those expectations themselves are part of the puzzle. Any comment on this?
Yeah. I think like one of the things that I do that I think helps the students and why they are so happy to be in my classes is because I also practice that. Like I say, here's our syllabi, or here's our syllabus, and do you want to change something? And they have the opportunity to look at it, and then halfway through they have the opportunity to vote out things. Like presentations, we hate these. These are the worst thing we ever did. And so one semester they got voted out completely. The next semester they wanted essays instead of a midterm. So I allow them to take I put myself on the line with them. Hey, this is not, we're in a space together. Do you like the way this is set up? And if not, let's change this. Can we even just change the class itself?
No, it's good.
Nice.
I want to add one thing that for me, that I actually like the quote because, and the word "I'm shell shocked," man, that's a great place to have dialogue, as Marshall was saying. It's like to have, and because it's just for students that you're actually going to say you're going to do something in this class. That's a shell shock alone, because most of my students are like, be in the corner, keep your head down, just follow the syllabus and get the heck out of the class. So to say we're going to be involved in groups and that you're going to do a campaign, I mean, that's a shell shocking experience. So I would really be with the student and say, I get why you're shell shocked. And the only other part that I would say, and then try to help them, guide them through that process. But the other thing I want to say is, I do think it's important that we give, and there's a way to do it, I think, where you give the students action, and then while they're doing the action, and usually the action takes sometimes 2 or 3 weeks, while they're doing that one action, we don't give them 2 more actions to do. We then give them things to think about, whether it be that action or more skills like the group dynamics. And then after a couple of weeks of them doing that one action, it could be going out, giving classroom presentations and tabling, or preparing for their campaign kickoff, or a press conference. So that it takes 2 or 3 weeks, but then we don't give them another action on top of that. And I just think that's a way to help balance. And then to be sensitive to the students. This semester, I'm giving more time for the action than the theoretical or the dialogue around the course material, because the students are demanding it, kind of what Soma's saying, because they feel like there's so much to do. So just be open to that.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to move us along.
Okay.
We have three questions here. Here's the middle question. This is coming from our friend Scott right on the screen there. Should new social action teachers reach out to the administration to educate them about how this course provides students an opportunity to learn and practice democracy and power in order to get them to buy into the concept and get the administration to buy into the concept? You know, Scott's story of the current campaign is in part prompts this. So this is a long-standing issue. So Scott, why don't you just elaborate a little bit and then let people respond?
And I would just say, Mike, it came out of what I told you in the first part, was I wanted to hear what you all think, and as we kind of, to help newer folks that are coming in to think about that question. And I would say there's some real benefits about doing that. But on the benefit on the other side is, for the first 5 years when the students are doing campaigns, my campus is 36,000 students. They had no idea that this was connected to a class. So I had 5 years of doing the class and them not knowing. But when the students won the minimum wage campaign, there was no longer done in silence, because the students were all over the news, and the administration got it that it was connected to the social action class, and it was over 4 semesters. So now we were kind of out in the open. So from then on, there's always been very tight coordination with administration. But now as new people are starting up, maybe right from the beginning to go and say, and to try to get their buy-in.
I just want just one footnote. When Scott's informed me when I was talking about this, that about half of his student campaigns are focused on the campus, policies on the campus. Everything from getting the printers in the library for commuting students who can't afford having a printer, to the homelessness campaign we have now, and other stuff in between. So if half the campaigns are campus focused, those ones in particular some of them are going to make the administration uncomfortable. And the homeless campaign is clearly a campus campaign. I know that's not always the model. Some folks, their approach is actually, we're gonna have the campaigns be focused off of campus, so you avoid this.
Yeah, that's my model.
Yeah,
Sorry to interrupt, but this is Betsy, and I require them to pick a target off campus.
So Betsy, in your case, do you still let the administration know what they pick, or is it not necessary?
It's not necessary, but they do make it very visible on campus with flyers and social media and sometimes events. So no, I don't tell them, and sometimes. So yeah, it depends what the students do. Yeah, it's a required course for sociology majors, and there's a lot of support from the administration, but yeah, I don't think the top administrators pay it much mind.
Yeah.
There's a lot else going on. We're the whole school's philosophy is hands-on learning. So it's actually not rare at all that every major has field projects off campus. You're supposed to practice the profession that you're doing. So it's actually, that part of it's not unusual or rare at all. It's the having to make it an activist campaign with a policy or systemic change goal. That's the thing that's unique. Not that students are acting as a group to raise issues.
Got it. Has anybody else had this experience? Marshall, when you've taught yours, have your campaigns been focused on the university at all? And at Harvard, maybe they're used to that, so it's the skin's a little thicker.
Well, they never like it. Let me put it that way. But no, I think for the organizing projects that they all do organizing projects. For me, one of the most critical things is that they have access to the constituency they're trying to organize. In other words, like somebody say, well, we want to organize single mothers with children in community of color. Well, how many folks do you know there? How are you going to make a bridge there? So now there are students who have those bridges, and there are organizations in the community doing that work, and that's cool. But so I think access to constituency is really matters, because otherwise who are you going to organize? And so, and for a lot of them, it is the campus, or it's related communities or whatever, whether it's DACA kids or whether it's first generation kids, or whether it's or the current disability policy of the school, or there's no class on XYZ. I think we've just sort of broken them in to expect this, and sort of, it's sort of like, well, gee, we're supposed to be a school of politics and government, and so learning to challenge institutions is part of what democracy is all about. So I think they have to tolerate it mainly as, if nothing else, as a fig leaf for their neoliberal agenda. So I don't know. But I did have one of the dean, a former dean here, wanted a meeting to say, okay, how do I deal with this when they target me?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's actually. I mean, I think Scott said some of that. So the dean coming for advice, not to shut it down, because that's not going to happen, and not to punish you, but kind of say, well, help me understand, because this is new from my experience. So the role of the faculty member, pretty universally it seems, is not to tell the students what their campaign should be, not even to tell them how to run it, but to but this broker role, this behind the scenes, just so you know what's going on kind of role, seems very legitimate, and actually helps maybe make it work a little smoother. Anybody else who, Luke or Jonathan, Tinka, Amelia, Janet, had any of you had this kind of experience yet, where students, not maybe it's something you're doing directly, but where students are sort of taking on the school and piss people off a little bit?
Yeah, well, I was involved with a campaign that had some of those parameters when I was at the Kennedy School in Marshall. I would like to think that that was the campaign that caused the dean to come ask you for advice.
Jonathan, remind, what was that?
That was HKS Speaks Out, where we had asked for a power and privilege training for all incoming students with Ritu Moli back in 2015.
Yeah, how did it turn out?
They did institute a change in the orientation agenda. Of course, it wasn't exactly the changes that we were asking for, but we saw some movement. But we had a couple of uncomfortable meetings with the dean and some high-ranking administrators. And I like to think that put sufficient pressure for them to come to Marshall for advice on how to handle us. But yes, so far at Cleveland State, again, I haven't started this process, but the dean is the one who's invited me to kind of pitch this course. So far, a lot of support. But we'll see if that support stays steady once we're up and running and effective.
Yeah. Luke?
At Stanford, we're currently in a really contentious negotiation with our county over what's called our general use permit, which governs how we can grow and develop over the next 30 years. And part of why that's contentious is because 3 years ago, we started a small research group with some students about this topic, seeing that the GUP was going to be coming down the line. And they did a ton of research, formed a student organization called Scope 2035 that has since been a huge pain to the university, because they've been campaigning and working with local neighborhood communities to make sure that their interests are being represented well by the county. So they're doing a lot of advocacy work, a lot of community organizing to get people to the sessions where Stanford is presenting their proposal, to give county supervisors language to challenge Stanford and data to use to challenge the university. And as a result, Stanford's contribution to things like affordable housing, traffic mitigation, employment, and other things is quite dramatically different now than I think it would have been had that student group not been really pressing them.
Yeah.
At the same time, that's created some really awkward moments for us. I mean, it's a student organization that now is fairly independent of the Haas Center, but it was really kind of catalyzed here, and so we have to be careful how we how we talk about that with our colleagues over in external relations, as they're doing some really difficult negotiations.
Yeah, well, it's fun to talk about charity to justice. I mean, feels very good. But we start getting into justice, and it makes people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Can I say something, Bobby, about that? Because I was talking to a colleague this morning, who is my mentor. He's at SF State. He's 90 years old, a wonderful man, and still teaches one class. And I told him, I said, what they're said about me in the meeting with the dean, and the dean doesn't think this. He's telling me what the president's thinking, is that, I'm inciting the students. And he said, well, I think you're exciting the students, not inciting them. So it gets to be, because, and I asked my students, I said, what do you think? This is the charge labeled by the administration. I'm inciting you. And they said, well, you're not telling us what to do, but you are encouraging us to be engaged. So you see what I'm saying? It's even though I would deny that I'm inciting, but I am encouraging them to take action. And I'm not saying what action it is. I said, here's that information, but it's really good. It's super powerful. And what you do with it is up to you. But, that is an encouragement. So it's just that the role is where I thought I was clearly not inciting them, and I would still hold that. If I'm talking to any one of you who are presidents, that's what I'm saying. But it's an encouraging role of taking action. And you can see where administration would be, you're encouraging them, there's a truth to that.
Yeah. The other thing to point out here is Randy Stoker's not on the call. He teaches a course on this kind of stuff, but the student role in that course is the research part that Luke just talked about. They're not actually they're not organizing a campaign. They maybe join a campaign, but that's not really the purpose of his course. This is a community-based research course, community-driven questions for the advocacy groups, to give them the data that they need. And that's a very valuable contribution. It's a really powerful course. It's not the same as what we're talking about here exactly. There's an overlap, but but in fact, it's a great role for the university to play, or students to play, because without that data, they don't have a case. They can't get in those conversations. And not to say that part of a campaign isn't to go gather the data, but you could have a course to just do that one piece and expose students, which I think is his way of introducing them to this kind of work.
I'd be very clear about what it is and what it isn't.
Yeah.
It's a conventional role to do research for activists, but not to be one.
Yep.
And I think the value of these courses is that it's about being one. It's about being an active citizen. Yeah. And I see the logic in what Randy's doing, but it's not the same thing.
No, I agree. And we've had that conversation, and we've been very, right from the very beginning, and we'll repeat it every time. What we're talking about here is courses where students do the work during the course. So, all right, there's one more question. And we try to
skip in, because in Barcelona we were unfortunately not that lucky as you were. When we started a campaign against sexual harassment in university, it was actually, we tried to talk to the dean, we tried to talk to the president of the university, we tried to talk to different instances, and they never answered. So when we made the issue public in the newspapers, the dean called us obviously, and she was not very happy. She was yelling at us. So it was not exactly the same thing. And afterwards, obviously, we had to face a lot of retaliations, but not just us as students, but also the faculty that supported us. And yeah, so it was a much more extended fight in that sense. We had to fight not only against professors that were harassing, but also against the institution that would protect them.
Interesting.
Yeah, and we're still continuing that battle.
Would you do it again?
Yeah, sure. Always. Definitely worth it.
Part of the process.
One of the things that we're going to have to draw out on these calls and in the resources aren't just the success stories.
Yeah.
Right? So that's going to be very important. It was important to that student who wasn't getting the success he wanted in the course of in the class, but even in the larger sense that you're going to get shut down, and you may get shut down repeatedly. That's going to be really important for us to be able to talk about that and not just sort of, make it seem like it all worked out just fine. All you have to do is get organized.
Yeah, and that's another whole dimension of the shell shock. And I think one thing we're grappling with at TCNJ is, a semester is very short time to actually do something. Right? So how do we build continuity among courses and among departments? Maybe in part by sort of guiding students to take the same courses, but that's very difficult to navigate through the college's requirements and the requirements of majors and so on. How do you scatter yourself among departments? But also opportunities for student groups to build on the work of a previous student group.
Yeah, I think, and that'll be part of the way Scott does is that last thing they hand in is a campaign book. That's then an option for the next class to pick up that campaign book. And clearly, another option is the students just keep doing the campaign, not with a class. Part of the challenge if you're a working student is, if I'm not getting credit for it, I don't have time because I have a job. So there's all those complexities, I think, are things we're gonna have to tease out in other discussions.
Can I just add to that, Bobby, is that the foundation contacted me. I didn't contact them, heard about the work, and they asked what could you use money for? And I said exactly that point. It's for students that want to continue the work outside the class, not to go back to their jobs, but to get internships, paid internships to do it. And that's what they're going to fund 8 folks, hopefully next spring, to continue on their campaigns, but outside the class.
Yeah, just to be clear, not the Bonner Foundation?
No, not Bonner. No.
But the Bonner Foundation, we have 3,000 students, 1,500 have Bonner funding. This absolutely can be something they can do in their work. So in their paid scholarship, stipended efforts. And we hope it is something they take on. Let me just, I think given where we are, we're not going to be able to get to this last question, but I'll just put it out there. This is from this guy, Scott, again. I changed my portfolio question to prompt to read. There are no exams in social action, so the portfolio is where you demonstrate your knowledge of the book and reader. To answer each question, you should always respond by keeping 3 things in mind: your campaign, the things you are doing and learning, the ideas about change from the book, this is Scott's book, and the case studies from the reader and the book. So he changed the portfolio question, and Scott, you'll have to explain this a bit more, but we have just a minute left. An example of a portfolio question: you and your group need to devise a recruitment plan. In devising such a plan, answer the following questions. What did you learn about recruitment from the previous social action campaigns from the book and the reader that could help your current campaign? Who is leading up the recruitment team and outreach team? And there may be another question, but
there are many other questions, but I just want to say is maybe next time we could talk about that. This is very detailed, but it's important. I just read the first portfolios, and they wrote them with their own experience and their own campaign. And even though I talked about the book and the reader and said, please, you got to integrate that, they didn't do the integration. This Ferrarian integration between ideas and concepts and kind of his history and what they're doing. So I'm trying to change up to make it even more explicit rather than implicit about this integration. And otherwise, it's kind of a feel-good experience. You know, this is what I did in my campaign, but not about what they're reading intellectually and thinking about theoretically or conceptually. So it'd be good to hear what other people are doing, like how to encourage that integration that Ferrer and Giroux and others and Gramsci and others talked about, this integration of theory and praxis.
So we'll save that, but it's there, and we'll pull this back out and make that a primary topic. The next webinar, November 15th, will feature Marshall. Marshall, you just want to give us a preview?
No, I mean, I think the intent is to, we teach public narrative as one of 5 leadership practices at the heart of how we approach teaching organizing or leadership. We've sort of broken it out because it has its own, there's so much demand for it as a way to connect oneself with one's community with the change the world needs. And it's rooted in bringing, I mean, I guess I think of it as how to access the emotional resources embedded in our values to turn threats into challenges, as sources of courage, of agency, of moral capacity. And we do that through the teaching of story of self, story of us, story of now. We'll try to explain some of that and then show a video or two and debrief it with you so you can see how this actually works. And then we can talk a bit about the pedagogy that backs it up. It's been a fascinating journey. We're doing a distance learning version of our public narrative class now for the first time. And we have about 100 students from some 30 countries in the class. And it turns out to be, working in story turns out to be a wonderful way to cross cultural boundaries, to cross generational boundaries, because everybody tells stories. And it's sort of grounded in our deep experience, life experience. And so that's the idea.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, we'll look forward to that. And we'll devote the bulk of that discussion on that one topic because there's a lot there. We don't want to rush it. Well, thanks everybody. I'm going to send an invite to this learning community. Do the best you can with it. Maybe that'll be a productive way for us to continue the conversation. And if you have any questions or whatever, use the discussion list or just email one of us directly. So thanks everybody. Talk to you soon.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Thanks a lot.